welcome back to my channel. I'm Magali, I'm an Oracle Apex developer, and in today's video we are going to build a flight search layout using a custom region template component in Oracle Apex. I will walk you through the HTML structure, explain how the CSS styling works, and show you how to take full advantage of slots and custom attributes in Apex template components. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Right, so let's start with the inspiration for this video, and for that I have taken the Avianca Hero region for selection of flight search. So it has a round trip, one-way options, it has hotels, cars, links, origin, destination, day pickers, and also the selection of passengers and a search button. So what we're gonna try to do in this video is construct a similar styling, and for that we're gonna use template components. Template components were released in 23.1, and since then it has had a couple of updates, and in release 24.1 we got the region only template, and that is what we're gonna focus on to create this layout. That way it could be reused for different things, but in this case we're gonna make an approach for airlines websites. Right, so how do we get that plugin set up? So first we're gonna go into Share Components and select plugins, and you have the option to import or create your own. In this case we're gonna do create, and we're gonna select from scratch, but you can also do a copy of an existing plugin and then modify it as you need. So we click next, and in this section you can set a name. So start with airline website hero block, and that will automatically generate an internal name, and this can be anything you would like, and is how you will identify your component. For example, if you were to use template directives and you want to add this component inside another template, you could just make a reference to the internal name, which is the static ID of this template, and use with an apply template, and that will make your component appear within there. For type, we're gonna leave it on template component, and you also have the option for quick pick. This quick pick is gonna make it easy for you to select using the create page wizard. Then you have the templates. You have three options. You have single, or also named partial, multiple, or report, and region only. For this section we're gonna focus on region only, and once we select that template we get a partial section with some placeholders giving you an example of how you can construct it. So we're gonna replace this code because we're gonna go for our own, and for that let me get my HTML and replace this bit. We have a top section with the options strip type and links, and then we have the search form which will contain all our fields. Then if you continue going down the line, you have the full escape mode HTML, but you can change this depending on what type of component you're doing. In this case it's okay with HTML. The standard attributes like row selection support or region template attributes are not available for region only. Then you have information, the version, about URL, and the help text. This help text will appear in the page builder, and it will appear on the help text once you hover over the region. So we can add airline website hero for flight search. Alright, so once you have added your partial, your HTML and the rest, you can click create plugin. Once that has created, you will see other set of options set up in the page, and for that we have the custom attribute section, and this automatically sync with your template. So whatever you have set between hashtags, it will be set as an attribute automatically. You can then go into each of these attributes and customize them as you need. So right now it has taken all the fields, all the substitution strings I have added in my template and creating custom attributes for that. If I were doing a single or multiple template for my plugin, this would be ideal, but in our case we're gonna go back into them and delete them because this would be slots, they won't be attributes, because we just want to create a layout for the user to be able to drop an item or a region or a button into these sections. So we're gonna go into these custom attributes, but before I delete them, I'll show you how they look. So if you go into each of them, for example, this one, additional options, you will see that you can select the sequence for it, the static ID. This has to be unique for each of the attributes, and also the label. The label is how it will display in your app builder. And then you have attribute group, which you can select anything that you have set up. Then on settings you have the type, session state value is the default, but if you have in, for example, a color specific, you could select color. If you have an icon, then you can change this type to be an icon, and that will show in the app builder, in the page builder, where the user can select any font Apex icons available. Same if you want to set it to a URL, media, select list, text area, just so no. Then you have if it's required. If it's required, then once the user has added your component into the page, you will be required to set up a value. You also have the data types depending on your column or how you're getting this information set up. You can select it here. You can also set a default value and then a condition if it depends of another attribute. You can also add a help text or examples, and again this will display in the help text section of the page. If this is an attribute that is important for accessibility, then you can enable this option as well and add any comments. So in this case, additional options is my placeholder, because that will contain my passengers count section. So we're gonna delete this bit. Gonna delete all the ones that we don't need. Alright, now that I have removed all the custom attributes I don't need, I have only left background image URL and opacity. Now these right here are part of my style for the top section, where we're gonna have a trip type, which is round trip or one way, and also the buttons or links for hotels and cars. So for that, I want the user to be able to customize it and set an opacity to this background image. So for that, we had to use the hashtags and then the name of your attribute. In this case, we have opacity and then also background image URL. For background image URL, we're gonna mark it as required because we do need that image for it to display in the background. And you can also change the label to what is more appropriate, because it gets generated automatically based on the static ID. So apply changes, and then you go back to the main screen. All right, then we have these attribute groups. So attribute groups is where you can set the grouping for your attributes. So for example, if you have 5 different attributes that are set up for styling, you could create an attribute group called styling, for example. So if I create this styling, and I'm gonna give it a sequence of 10. I apply changes, but before that I will make sure I stay on page. And if you go back into your custom attributes, you will see that section over here, attribute group, and you can see the new one we created, which is styling, and that will make it appear on the attributes in your page builder over a section called styling. So we could do that, set it to styling. apply changes and go back. Then we don't need action positions on action templates, so we're skipping that section, and then we go to slots. So slots, as the help text says in there, are placeholders in your template components. Here is where you define what kind of Apex content can be inserted, like an item, button, a region. And all the content is passed via slot using the hashtags, as well as the custom attributes. And then we have also default slots, and this is where the region where you will expect the item to go. Right, so for a slot, we're gonna create a new one, add a slot, and we're gonna name it selection country just to keep it consistent. Oops. Okay, so let's have the static identifier. The static identifier we need to make sure matches just institution string within the partial. So for the name, I'm gonna put countries selection or countries fields. So in here, in component type support, you can select regions, items, or buttons. And in this case, I want to support items. And you can select if, because you are the designer of this component, you can select if you only allow text fields, if you only allow color pickers, date pickers, etc. So in my case, for the countries, I would allow, purple LUV. I will also allow select list, select many, select one, and maybe text field with autocomplete if you have that enabled. And you also have the option for the grid layout rendering, and you can click grid support and then specify if there's a maximum grid columns that you need. By default, it's set to new row. So let me go ahead and set up the rest. All right, so now that I have set up all the fields, all the slots that I have in my partial template, I have set the dates fields to only allow for items that are date picker. Additional fields can be any item that the user might need, and for search button, I have set that it can only be a button. Now for default slots, you can select any of the above, but first let's go ahead and apply changes. And if we scroll down, we'll see the default slots. So for, I don't have any region slots, so I will just select for items and perhaps additional fields. And then for buttons, we definitely want the search button to be the default. All right, so before we go into the CSS, let's apply changes, and let's go into the page and see how that will look so far. So on body, you can click create region, and you will see it on the type set up at the top on the application components. So we're gonna select airline website hero blog, which is the one I just created, and let's call it hero. And then in here, if you remember, we have the Apex DOM ID. That is the static ID that Apex generates for your component, but you can go ahead and add a static ID if you need it in here, and that will be replaced in your component. On the attributes, we'll see that we have the setting for opacity, which is one of the custom attributes I set up in my template. And we also have styling, which is the attribute group we created. So for this one, we have the background image URL, and because it is required for my template, I need to be able to select one. However, just realized we forgot to set the type. So let me go back into share components, go into it, and then change this to be instead of session state value, I want it to be a link to target page or URL. So this will automatically change it to an HTML attribute because that's what it will go into the href attribute of the A element. So apply changes, go back to the page and create the region again. Attributes, and now you will see that the background image URL attribute actually has a section to select the link. So in this case, I don't want it to go to any page in this application, but the options are the regular ones for the link builder, page in this application, page in a different application, or a custom URL. So for the URL, for now, I'm gonna set google.com. But you can set up any image you want here. In my case, I have under a static application files, I have a banner. So let's see, it'll be background sky.jpg, which is just a very nice sky styling for an airplane. So let's copy the reference, go back into the page, and let me just rename this to hero. On the attributes, set the background image URL to that link and click OK. Now if I save, in the region, in the component, you will see that we have the countries fields, dates field, additional fields, and the search buttons. All these are the slots I define in my component. If you remember, we said that a default slot will be additional fields. So see what happens if I select display only. If you notice, the additional fields start getting bold. So that's where by default it will allow me to go, but you can later set it up anywhere else. Okay. Sign in. And you can see here that we have not set up trip type or links into a component, so I'm gonna go back into the plugin and set these bits up, trip type and links, and add another slot for trip type, which will be items. And for trip type, I only want to allow either checkbox or radio group. So there we go. And then my other slot, which was links. And remember, this is static identifier needs to match the one in your template. So for links, I'm gonna allow buttons only. Okay, so now if I apply changes and run my page again, then that will disappear. But to see what happens when we add the styling, let's go back into the component. And you see this section right over here. I'm gonna change that to not identify just because I don't want to set any items to have a defined slot, but I just wanted to show you how that works. So for files, you can click create file. So let me just enable stay on page, apply the changes to that change on the default slots I just did, scroll down again, and you can click create file. If you already have your CSS file, then you can just go ahead and use that. So in my case, I'm gonna have airline hero.css and then click create. So that will bring you into this nice screen where you can add your CSS. So let me retrieve my CSS. There we go. So let's break down this code. So first we have our container, the fly search container. So for this, because in this inspiration we can see it has rounded borders, I have said that I want a border radius of 20 pixels and I want the border to be white. That's the entire container. Then we have the top section. And in the top section, you can see I have position relative. So this means that all the absolutely positioned children, like our overlay, for example, will sit inside this element, which is the top section. And we also apply the rounded corners with both the top left radius and both the top right radius as well to 20 pixels. And then we have overflow hidden. What does overflow hidden means? It ensures that nothing spills out past the curve that I have set up. Then we have the image overlay. The image overlay is what adds that nice styling in the background. So the position absolute right here places this div over the entire top section because we want the background image to be part of all this section right here. So actually I'm gonna save these changes before I continue and show the items so you can see how they look right now and how the CSS will be making the changes. So let's add some items in here. So for trip type we said radial group. Let's see what happens if you try to add a Papello Beach. You cannot do that because we have set up only radial groups are available. So let's grab a radial group and you can see right away it goes to trip type. And I'm gonna set a trip type. And then I want 2 columns. And I want it hidden. Then on template options, I'm gonna stretch the form item. And on the list of values, I'm gonna do a static. And for display value, I'm gonna do round trip. And call it round trip here. Then we have one way. And I'm gonna remove the sorting at runtime. Click OK. I do not want to show a null value or extra value, so just removing that. And click save. And let's see if we click run, you will see that my item appears in the top. Right now there's no stylings, that's why it's looking at that, but I wanted you to see how the CSS that we apply starts molding everything. For links, we said only buttons. So for this one, I'm gonna put 2 buttons here. And we're gonna name this one hotels. And just hotels. And then because I want to mimic this kind of a styling with an airplane icon in there, I'm gonna go for a type. I think we can say normal as it is, but set an icon. And for the icon, I'm gonna go for airplane. Plane. Yep. Yep. This one right here. And for now, I'm just gonna put define by dynamic action because I don't want it to do anything, but you could set in the any link you would like. And then for this one, I'm gonna rename this to be cars redirect and change this to cars. And again, the same icon. Actually, sorry, this would be, because this is the link, I don't want to have plain, I will just add a link icon instead, this one right here, because we want to be as close as the Avianca one as we can, at least for this tutorial. So yeah, setting that up. If we run the page and see our changes, you see that we have both icons in here, and we just need to change this to be text with icon. All right, now for the countries fields, we want in my case, I think I'm gonna go for I select one. I'm gonna name this departure. And I'm gonna do that hidden. No, actually we're gonna do optional floating. We're gonna stretch it. Okay. And for the icon, we actually want the plane now. So plane. And then for the list of values, I have gone and set up a LUV that has all the countries along with the flag icon. So just leaving that there. And I'm gonna duplicate this and add return. Update the label. And everything remains the same. Let's save and run our page. And we have the same styling as this one where we have the plane icon and the departure, and then you can see we have the countries and their corresponding flags. Right, perfect. Now we gonna set up the date field, and for that we specify that we want day pickup. So the same, we put it in there. It'll be return. Maybe we can rename this to origin and return. And for this one, you could call it return date. And then we're gonna do minimum date. We're gonna set it to +0 days because we want it to start from today. Sorry, this won't be return date, this will be departure date. Duplicate this item and we're gonna do return date. Alright, and for this one we're gonna set, well actually yes, we're gonna set a minimum date of 1 day and a maximum date. There's no maximum date for this one. We have optional floating. Just we're gonna make sure that we are stretching the form. Okay, and then let's save and run it. Okay, and then we have departure date and return date. Perfect. And the departure day, we can select today's day. Let's add some format mask so it's more friendly. So for that, I'm gonna select this one right here. Okay. Now for the additional fields, we have that we wanted to have. Actually, I'm gonna go for a text field for this one. For additional fields, and it can be passengers. And for this one, we're gonna want it like that is fine. Make sure we stretch it, and we're gonna leave it default and an icon of a person, and maybe this one. Okay, perfect. All right, and then we just need the search button, which is the last one, and we're gonna do text hot and then search. Okay, let's click save and run that page again. And yeah, perfect. So we have all our fields that we need for our component, all the ones needed for this layout. So now we can go back to the CSS. So again, I'm gonna go into the plugin, into the hero website, and finish running through the file. Okay. So we left over the top section. Now we had the image overlay. So I'm actually going to do one bit at a time so you can see how this works. And then something very important for the template components when you're setting it up is that whatever file you create in here, you need to make sure you add it to the cascading style sheet section right here, or if you have any JavaScript code, you need to make sure you add your file within this section, otherwise it won't be loaded into the screen. So we do that, apply changes, and let's run our page again. And now that we have added the first two bits, we can see the little border. You can see it very slightly here, the border. And if we inspect it, you will see in the elements different classes. Make this, zoom in. You can see it here that the background image has been substituted by what I define in my attribute for the component. I haven't set up an opacity, so it's not displaying that, and it's not showing the image right now because we haven't added the CSS for this. So let's go back into our plugin and into the CSS file, and to make it easier on us, I'm gonna open it in a new tab. So now I'm gonna remove this section right here and go through the rest. So for the image overlay, we have set the position to absolute, and this places this div over the entire top section because we wanted to cover the round trip, the trip type, and also the buttons. We have an inset of 0. This is a shorthand using CSS for top, bottom, left, and right. We have a Z index set to 1. This means it sits below the content we'll place above it. So because we don't want the image to be on top of our items, we want it to be displayed at the back. So we have set it to 1. And then we said that the background size is a cover and the position is center. Then for the top options, this is the content that is seated on top of the background image. So we have position relative. And then we have Z index set to 2, ensuring that this is above the image. If you remember, this one is 1, so this will be 2. And then we have added Flexbox to arrange the trip type and the buttons to be on opposite ends, which is why it has a space between, and we are making sure that the items are aligned in the center and have some padding between each other of 1 rem. Then for trip type and top links, and for this one, we are creating the white peel layout, same as we have in Avianca, like this white background right here. And Flexbox in here, display flex, is just helping us align the buttons and the spacing, keeping things smooth and nice. Then for the search form, and also the search form fields, again we're using Flex to accommodate the layout of our items. And this section is the lower half of the component where the items are placed, and for that we're using a clean, white, and simple styling. So we're just adding the border radius at the bottom to be white so it mixes with the page, and then making sure that they are aligned in the center, all of the items display on the same line. Then for my search button, I have just added that I wanted a different border, so I have added some border radius and some padding in there, and I want the color of the text to be white, so that's what we're doing there. So let's save changes, and I'm just gonna go back to partial and just make sure that we have everything here. I always name my classes with CC, which is just custom class, so I can tell them apart from Apex default ones. So let's go ahead and run the page again. And now you can see that we have the layout we were expecting. So we have the round trip, one way, hotels, cars, the passengers, the return day, departure, origin, and it gives us a very similar layout to this one right here. You can obviously customize it a bit more. For the opacity, I haven't added any opacity here, so I'm just gonna go back into the page and in the attributes and set my opacity. So for this one, I'm gonna go for 0.6. I think that's way too opaque, so let me just go back, attributes, and then let's change this to 0.8, maybe. Yep, that's better. So now you can see it in the blue sky background, and we are able to see more the white peel section, like round trip for one way, hotels and cars, as well as my button and the items. And this looks pretty similar to this one right here, and is very easy to customize by the user as well, to who you're providing this component, because they can set whatever items they need, and this could be used for any other type of website as well, where you need to have different fields, and you just have to rename them or have some help text into each of the slots. And yep, that's pretty much it. Alrighty, so let's quickly recap what we built in this video. We created a custom region template in Oracle Apex 24.2 using the new template component feature region only. We walked through the HTML structure step by step, understanding how each section, like the top bar and the search form, fits together. We learned how to style each part using CSS, including how to use position relative and absolute for layering, how the z-index controls the stacking, and how Flexbox helps us align the content. We also implemented a background image overlay that looks visually rich but keeps the content readable. And finally, we use custom attributes and slots to make this template dynamic, reusable, and completely declarative inside Apex. This approach with template components gives you full control over layout and design, while still staying within the low-code Apex model. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any suggestions of any other videos you would like me to do, please leave it in the comments below, and see you on the next one. Bye bye!